Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the RFD show. We are so excited to jump into the first podcast of 2021. First of all, for everyone who's listening, happy New Year. We wish you all of the best from the RFD team, and may this just be a year of rugby growth and explosion all over the globe. That's what we are hoping for this year. Joined on the other side is the Jackal, aka Jog. Jog, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good. And yourself?
Good, man. Good. Y'all can't complain. It's summer in South Africa, so I'm happy. I'm excited to see some rugby, and of course the Curry Cup is almost at the end of its tournament, and the different types of tournament structures we saw in the last couple of months is crazy. But that's not what we want to talk about in this episode. Jock, why don't you let everyone know what we are going to discuss in this episode, and then we can just take it from there.
Yeah, so basically, we saw this image on social media that went like, what is the probability or how would it look like if the British and Irish Lions team plays against the Southern Hemisphere four teams, like the Rugby Championship teams combined? Um, so North versus South type of stuff. And yeah, how would it look? And I think today we'll just talk about like who do we think will be a no-brainer in a team, or how would it look like, where would we play, all that stuff. So that's basically what the topic is for today.
That's so awesome. I think this topic is something that all rugby lovers would like to see someday. Actually, we would like to see how a southern team or a what do you call it, a rugby championship team will look like. You know,
Mm.
that would be very interesting. And can players like Andre Pollard and Aaron Smith play together or not? Because of the styles of play, it's very different. Even between the four Southern teams, it's even different between the styles of play. So, what's your take? Let's keep it from north to south, and then we'll bring in the cannonball a bit later. You know what I'm talking about. We'll bring that conversation into this one later. Uh, what do you think a British and Irish Lions um, team would look like against the SANZAAR team? Do you think they'll stack up nicely? Do you think they'll have gaps where the Hemisphere team will play better or will lack defensive, offensive? What do you think?
Well, I don't want to be biased or anything, but I think the strength of Southern Hemisphere rugby is so great that a team like the British and Irish Lions, it's a proper team. And
Mm,
I would just, yeah, it's difficult to see them winning all the time. Um, uh, it's difficult because with the Southern Hemisphere teams, like you said, they're so different styles they play. Um, it's like, where is the gap that they don't quite have yet? So it's quite difficult, because you have the New Zealand teams who can play in super wet conditions and super cold conditions, and you have the Australians and South Africans and Argentinians who can also play in cold, but not that great in wet weather, but they can play in hot weather. So the altitude and all that stuff. So it's quite difficult to even think that the British and Irish Lions team would, I wouldn't say dominate, but have a good results against the SANZAAR team.
So basically, what I'm hearing from your side, and I completely agree, is that the Northern Hemisphere team would probably play better together as a unit
Mm,
as the Southern
yes.
Hemisphere team because of the location of each and every nation. So
Mm,
we are like literally thousands and thousands of kilometers or miles, whatever your metric is, from each other, where England and Scotland and Ireland and Wales is basically, neighboring each other.
yeah.
So it's definitely different. I mean, Argentina, when Argentina goes to New Zealand, it's almost the same distance than when we fly to England. Maybe off by 10 or 15%, but it's basically the same distance.
Mm.
And I think if you look at if you look at it like that, it's different types of plays. But here's my question to you, and I'll also give my opinion about this. If this is to happen somehow in the next couple of years, where we have like a invitational, championship
Mm.
3 weeks, and everyone gets together at a dome or at a place, or because they'll fight for to host this. Any nation
Yes.
would fight to
Yeah.
host this. But anyway, wherever they get together, they do this. Do you think if we play in the northern hemisphere, um, the British and Irish Lions has a much better chance to beat us than when they travel south, because that's normally how the structure works. They travel south.
Mm.
If we need to travel north, do you think they have a much better chance to beat us in that type of weather and play?
Well, it's for me. It's a good question, but it for me it depends who we pick in the SANZAAR team. If it's like players that already played in France, they played in Japan, already in the northern hemisphere, you have a lot of South Africans playing in England. Um, I think then we are more than capable to pitch up wherever and pitch up with a good team that can compete against a team like the British and Irish Lions. So for me, I do think they will have some bit of advantage regarding the conditions and knowing how to play the conditions. But um, I think with the amount of Southern Hemisphere players already up north, I think they have um, conditioned their bodies to play in that environment as well. So it's going to be difficult for the northern teams to get something on the upper hand for them. But I think it's just like you said earlier, the distance between them is not great, so they have more type of the same tactical plays and all that stuff. So
Hmm.
that's the only thing I can see them beating us on paper by.
Yes, I agree with you there. I think it's different because if if Sunzor picks players that has offshore exposure, like you said,
Mm,
players that went to play in France and England and Scotland and those leagues, it will be different because then they match up quite well. And we have spoken about this on a podcast, and I made a bold statement that why don't Wales or England or Scotland or Ireland, it doesn't matter, but I
mm,
specifically said Wales. Why don't Wales like bring Alan Wynne Jones? Okay, why don't they send him or sent him when he was like literally at his end? Because I know he's basically already going into coaching staff with them and stuff like that. I know the most cap player in the world, and I don't know all the accolades they give him in regards to that. But why didn't they send him to a team like the Highlanders or the Blues or the Province or any team that's in the Southern Hemisphere? Can play for them at a on a 2 year loan, get get not the best of money or the best of salaries that you can get in the Northern Hemisphere, get up those knowledge, get the knowledge that the Southern Hemisphere teams has, because then you can go back and you can become an advisor to your team and know how they play. Because we literally lose hundreds of players every year to the Northern Hemisphere leagues because of funds, and that's the main reason, because of
yes,
funds.
yes.
But when they get back and they play for the nation, they have the expertise to say, listen here, this is what this is what Itoje does on the lineouts. Listen here, this is what Owen Farrell does. This is what Element Jones. They can literally whisper in each other's ears. Like we know what they do because we've played with them,
Mm.
and I think that's different because they don't do that with us. And I know because of the funds. Yet the funds or the wage gap, if we can call it like that. I don't want to offend anyone, but the wage gap between the southern and the northern hemisphere teams is astronomical. Yet the southern hemisphere teams has more World Cups than I mean, like anyone else. New Zealand has more World Cups than the northern hemisphere combined. So I understand that, but I saw this photo that we were speaking about. Sorry, we were speaking about, and we have two, four, six, seven World Cup titles in the Southern Hemisphere, and they have one. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's
Seven
so
to
crazy
one.
because you think, if you think rugby, if when I was little, when I think rugby, I think of England,
Mm,
and you think of Ireland as you have those great names in O'Driscoll, O'Gara, you
yeah.
have Johnny Wilkinson, you have
Mm,
Martin Johnson, all those players, you have Jason Robinson, and there's so many to talk about, but still you have the South African and the Southern Hemisphere teams that just dominate in World Cups, and it's quite it's hard to understand for me as a rugby fan. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Just why don't the Northern Hemisphere players come south? I understand it's a professional sport and all that stuff, and you need to to look to your future and all that stuff with salary and all that stuff. But I agree with you. If you're at the end of your career, you have 2 3 years left. Even a year here will benefit you greatly. I mean, you had a few players with the Stormers a couple of years back. I think Jamie Roberts was there,
mm,
someone like Hugh Jones and all that stuff.
mm,
And then a year or so later, you play against your team. Um, you play with your team like Scotland against South Africa. And I remember Hugh Jones just did stuff that we wouldn't expect a Scottish player to do because he was here
mm.
and he made a name for himself. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
difficult. So 2 3 years, take a year, come to the southern hemisphere. Doesn't matter where. Gain your expertise, and you have another year left to play for your country. You have so much knowledge to give. So yeah, that's interesting, and we can talk a lot about financial boosts and all that stuff, and if this comes to life, the sponsors and all that stuff, how good it will be for world rugby, and
Mm.
maybe a neutral venue like, let's say, Japan or Dubai or wherever, that will also be a huge factor for fans and people that don't know the game to see the two great teams of North and South playing together, playing against each other.
Abs- yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Um, it is very interesting, but I would like to know in your opinion. And which team in the British and Irish Lions do you think is most benefited and the one that's least benefited? So this is in regards to selection and overall representation in the team of the four different nations. Yes, who do you think is most benefited and who do you think is least benefited in the
Mm.
British and Irish Lions?
Well, for me, it's it's quite difficult because you have England, who is probably the better of the four teams overall. I mean, they were in the World Cup finals a few times. They won the Six Nations, and you have Wales that wins this year. You have Ireland that wins the other year. But I think overall, uh, there's a few jokes going around in world rugby right now about Scotland and um, where they are at the moment. So yeah, I think Scotland over the years. I can't remember a lot of Scottish players, but it's just my mind is not there right now. But yeah, I think Scotland and and Wales are probably the two teams that have the least representation if you look at at the teams at the moment. I mean, you have England, who has a lot of players. You have Ireland, who has good quality players. Um, I saw a video conference with a few of the English former English players who picked their British and Irish Lions teams, and most of them picked either an English uh, player or Irish, and then one or two Welsh players, and I think one of them picked one Scottish player. So I'm struggling to see the the uh, diversity of players in a British and Irish Lions team. For me, sometimes it just feels like they talk so much about England and Ireland. They must just get a team that's just those two nations. So yeah, I think more representation about the other teams, but also you need to pick the best team. So you're gonna automatically pick the team that is doing better at that stage in the selection process.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but
I completely agree with you there. It's
mm,
England.
yes, but then you look at the southern hemisphere, and I'm questioning how many Argentinian players, how many Australian players will there be, because they haven't
That's what I'm getting
performed
at.
as good. Yeah.
That's literally where I was going towards, because yes, Scotland is like Scotland is only filling up the gap in the emblem at the moment.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
basically all that's being done for them. And Scotland, for me personally, is like a 5 out of 10 if we have to rate them. New
Mm,
Zealand is like a 9.5 out of 10. If we play New Zealand or any team plays New Zealand, I almost back New Zealand automatically because of the way they play. Scotland is a 5. I'm not
yes.
scared if we play them, but they can pitch up the day.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
not that they're bad at all, but I'm not scared if we play them. We should beat them. No offense to any Scottish listeners or Scottish fans out there. That's just the way I see your team. But if we play England, I'm scared again. It's like an 8.5, 9. We can definitely lose to them comfortably.
Yes.
And that's the difference. Um, and I believe precisely what you said. Argentina will probably just get Pablo Matera in and then Sanchez. That's basically it. That's the two that I
Mm,
can think of, because to be quite honest, Sanchez will only beat Andre Pollard and Bowden Barrett for the 10 spot, or Richie Mwanga, with his kicking. He's a phenomenal kicker. He's probably the best kicker since a previous Argentine was the best kicker. I mean,
mm,
kicking, not running, attacking, defending, stepping, catching. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying kicking. Kicking is the best. Okay. For me personally, in the Southern Hemisphere, by
mm,
far. Yet, we have developed a number 10, a fly off, to more than just a kicker in the Southern
yes.
Hemisphere. We have had traditional 10s, but we have developed to a Bowden Barrett, which is as fast as a wing,
Mm,
or a 100 Pollard, which is actually an inside center at a 10. A bit bigger, bit stronger, can step, can attack, can defend.
yes.
So things happened and they evolved. But at the end of the day, I could only see them in the squad, literally. I can't see anyone else in the squad from Argentina. The rest will be filled up with primarily 30, or roughly 30% New Zealand players, 30% South African players, 20% Australian players, and then 10% or 5% for Argentina. It won't be filled
Yeah.
up equally because unfortunately it's not equal in the players' stats. Even
Mm,
if we can just go at stats, it's not even about feelings. If we can go at stats, that will be the best way they can pick this team. But I would be very interesting to see this theoretically being played out, because even with 7 World Cups, brilliant teams, I mean, phenomenal coaches, phenomenal structures, phenomenal everything from the Southern Hemisphere, I can't see this team playing as a team. We have too
Mm.
many different ways of style and play, and the gap that do I believe the gap is way too big to come together for 6 weeks and play against other people. That's what I personally believe. I
Yeah.
would definitely want to see it, but I would favor the British and Irish Lions before I favor a
Mm.
SANZAAR team. Just because it's like a schoolyard get together. Let's play ball.
Yes.
Let's play ball. So yes, but the last couple of minutes of this episode, I want to bring in a third team into this play, and I think this is actually the shocker for most people to hear this, but we can't leave out the Pacific Islanders. Okay, we can't leave out Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, making up the Pacific Island um, as a team. And then, of course, there's smaller nations as well, which I can't pronounce their names, but I'm going to focus on the main three: Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa. Jock, do you think a tri nations between these essentially 12 teams, which is going to be three teams then, do you think this could potentially happen, first of all? And second of all, would it be successful?
That's a really difficult question. I think if you get this three teams together, you start with the seven series or something like that, um, where they can just show their skill, all that stuff, and maybe later on, maybe do a series where they each play each other once or twice. I would think that would be a spectacle to watch. I think the the vibe in the stadium will be so great, and I just like to see, like, you bring the Pacific Islanders in, then you bring in the skill, the the I don't want to call it ego, because not ego, it's just that confidence with ball in hand, all that stuff. That's what we love about New Zealand also. So
Hmm.
no, I think it's a cool idea. If it's possible, who knows? But I would love to see something like that happen.
I I like the way that you said about the sevens, but to be quite honest, then the Pacific Islanders have it. So it would be interesting. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, we'll see if this happens. I again doubt it will be successful. I know there's
Mm,
gonna be people going to hate me for this, or probably going to dislike what I'm saying, because on paper it looks amazing. It looks like
yeah.
every 9-year-old's rugby dream to 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 get this up and going.
A PlayStation game.
A PlayStation, your format, rugby '08. Um, but I can't see this happen just for the sake
Yeah,
that there's too many egos. Who's gonna
yeah,
be the coaches? Who's gonna be the organizers? Who's gonna host this? Where's the money gonna come from? Who's gonna have the TV license? Who's gonna get the overall branding or the sponsorship of the kits? Stuff like
yeah.
this.
The
It's
small
gonna
stuff,
ruin. Yeah,
the behind
actually,
the
the thing
scenes
that's
stuff.
nothing. Yeah, the behind the scenes stuff. It's like it's nothing to do on the pitch.
Yeah,
If they could just pitch up and play ball, that's gonna happen.
yeah.
Okay, but that's not happening in rugby. It's a professional sport, and so personally, I can see this happen. It's amazing to talk about. It's amazing to discuss it, and just to get our thoughts out, because this would have been amazing. This would have been absolutely amazing. Yet, that is what we have for in this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of 2021. We are very excited for this year's rugby overall. We are excited to see the Springboks play again. As Rossi said in a recent interview, he's doing everything in his ability to get everything ready so that we can still play the British and Irish Lions. And if it has to be changed, we will even travel to a place to go play,
Mm,
which is again very interesting to hear, because I think the sponsors isn't too happy about that, but we'll we'll probably see how it unfolds.
Yes.
Then till next time, Jock, thank you so much for joining me on the other side. It was really awesome to discuss this topic with you. If you have a question of the day, you can throw it out there right now. And then till next time.
Yeah, so question of the day is basically hypothetically who will be your head coaches of the two teams, the head coach and the assistant coaches. Um, is it going to be a New Zealand head coach? It's going to be South African, maybe Argentinian. Um, who will you pick in your coaching positions for the SANZAAR team and for the British and Irish Lions team?
Perfect. Great. Daai is actually 'n goeie vraag.
Mm,
Okay. Awesome. Laat ek hierin gou pause.
okay. Het jy tyd vanaand vir nog 'n podcast?